We believe we have the best player in women's college basketball here and the most exciting player. We didn't want to stand pat this offseason. JuJu recognized that. The rest of our team recognized that. And we went out and got Kiki and TVO. We wanted to say, let's bring the best version of LA. Let's bring the best version of the West Coast basketball to the Big Ten. This is Coach Lindsay, a.k.a. GZ, and you're tuned in to Women's Hoops Network.
What do your players call you?
I'm laughing because there's a couple iterations of names. There's Coach Lindsay, which is totally fine. Some people are Coach G, but then there is GZ, like Coach G became GZ. So there's a little bit of GZ in there.
Okay. And I saw that on Instagram when you and JuJu went to the Dodgers event. Okay. And I thought that's what it said. So I'm like, I wonder if the players call her that and if that's why they're referencing that. So let's just start with this. You know, you've been in the coaching circuit for decades and you've coached not just, you know, the women's game in college, but also in the men's professional league. Just talk a little bit about the difference in that and coaching, you know, the Cavaliers and then coaching now young women.
Yeah, I mean, I really think what my time in the NBA taught me is that what elite players look for in their coaches transcends gender, in my opinion. I think elite players want a couple things from their coaches. Number one, they want you to know what you're talking about. You know, really great players can kind of, particularly NBA players, can kind of smell a fraud right away, like if you don't know what you're doing. But secondly, they want you to know what you're talking about, but also be able to apply that in a way that helps them get better. So it's not enough just to be smart, but kind of arrogant with that knowledge. Like you have to help them apply the knowledge. But then also, I think the best players want a coach who cares about them as a human being. I found that with the NBA players, and I find that with our women. So to me, there are more similarities than differences in terms of coaching elite players and how you build the best connections. It's knowing what you're doing. It's applying that information to them to make them better, but it's also caring about them as a human being beyond the court. In terms of, you know, what I've done, I tried to bring a lot of knowledge back from the NBA, and a lot of it is really applicable. And at the same time, there's other areas in which college is different. They're not going home to families every night. They're not, married necessarily and doing their own thing. They still need us to kind of do the comprehensive life skills around them as well. So there's some differences, but I think there's a lot more similarities in many ways.
Do you use any of those skills or tactics when it comes to recruiting?
I definitely feel like, this new landscape of women's basketball that we're in, or the new landscape of college basketball, where there is the transfer portal and there's NIL opportunities and there's a bigger, I think, platform for women's basketball. I do find myself calling upon my NBA experiences more, kind of the things I learned watching the front office and the way that, I saw the business of basketball. I do think that's more applicable now than ever before. So I do use a ton of that knowledge. I still think, I'm uniquely suited for college, and, these are 18-year-olds to 22-year-olds. But there's no question that the synergy between the pro and college game and my experiences is really useful these days.
Let's just talk about you bringing the culture back to Southern Cal. People hear that and they go to Cheryl Miller, Lisa Lett, the big names. And you are bringing that back, of course, with JuJu and the help of, her teammates. So talk about that feeling of bringing the culture back.
1000%. You can see behind me on this wall, right?
Absolutely.
There are 6 women that I wanted on the wall here because they're the Mount Rushmore of USC women's basketball. It's the McGee twins, Lisa Leslie, Tina Thompson, Cynthia Cooper, and Cheryl Miller. And what I tell people is not only are these the Mount Rushmore of USC women's basketball, they're the iconic women in all of women's basketball. And I took the job because of them and this history here, knowing that women's basketball could be successful at USC, knowing what this school has to offer. And I feel like one of the challenges was to bring it back, but also to do it in a modern way where these players today get to be themselves. So I think one of the cool things about the success we had this year is that it rightfully so shined a light on Cheryl, on these 6 women, on the history here, on the 2-time national championship teams. because I don't think those women get enough attention. And at the
Yeah.
same time, it's linked us to that history and allowed us to be great, allowed, JuJu to understand and the rest of our players to understand where, this program has come from. So it's been one of the really unique aspects of what we've done here is linking the past with the future.
Absolutely. And with JuJu being mentioned, her signing on to your program, what was that feeling like to get a hometown kid to stay home?
I mean, I kind of knew that it would be game changing for all of us. You set the vision, you want people to believe in that vision. But when a young person of her stature chooses to come here when we were 12 and 16 the year before, when she could go anywhere, when the easier thing to do would have been to go to one of these more established programs, the courage it took for her to do that, the belief in me, the belief in USC, really the belief in herself to be able to do something next level where you bring a program back and connect it to the community. I think it's legendary stuff. So I was pretty excited at the time. And even now going through this journey with her has been just an experience that's beyond words.
Yeah, she's bringing more eyes back to the program, eyes from across the country, filling the arena back up, commercials, mentioned in TV shows. So that's awesome for the game of women's basketball altogether. And with that being said, of course, with her success and with the success of the program, you're able to land big names like Kiki Iriafen and TVL. How does that feel to be able to bring them in and to keep your program trending upward?
Exactly. I mean, I think you hit it the nail on the head. This wasn't about signing one star. This wasn't about one great season. This is about building the elite program in women's college basketball, or bringing this back to being the elite program. And I think that's where the impact of JuJu, the impact of USC women's basketball this season is greater than what people realize. Like that's the type of stuff where legends are built, right? When you built something and people are lining up to want to play with her because she's a winner, because she's a humble superstar, right? Because they see what LA is, they see what USC is and what we could be. So I think it's really growing in that sense. We wanted to build something lasting, and I think that's starting. We obviously have a lot of work in front of us. We haven't won a national championship yet. We haven't gone to a Final Four. That's all in front of us. But I think as you see what's happening, this was a young person who chose to come here, who wanted to give back to her city. She's now a star in LA. I mean, this is a city that embraces stars and she's one of them, but it's also her gravitational pull, I think, has allowed us to say, okay, this is what can happen for women's sports here. This is what can happen for sports in LA. And, we know that we didn't want to stand pat this off season. We wanted to keep getting better. And JuJu recognized that. The rest of our team recognized that. And we went out and got Kiki and TVO and the incoming freshmen. And we think we have a chance to even improve on what we've done.
Kiki, she of course used to be on the other side of your program. You guys were playing against her, and it was reported that she had a no contact. So just off of that, and then you hear, that she's reaching out, wanting to be a part of your program, and then fast forward to now, ultimately choosing to play for you. How does that make you feel? How does that make your players feel?
I mean, it's crazy, right? Like you think about right from 5, 10 years ago. I never would have imagined, right, the landscape of women's basketball being where this is the place that people want to come. I mean, I imagined it, but like to see it happen in real time is pretty unbelievable, right?
Sure.
When someone says, "Hey, I want a chance to be in my hometown, but also win a national championship, to play at the highest level, to have a chance to go pro," like that. That's what I envision building, and pretty neat to see it happen. When someone has a no contact in the transfer portal, it just means that they don't want to be contacted by, 175 schools. We had heard, before I even talked to her, that maybe she wanted to come home to LA. I had no conversations with her till she was in the portal. And then even the night that she went in the portal, she couldn't even talk until the next day because she had a school project. That's Kiki, right? She graduated from Stanford in 3 years. But in the conversations, just like with JuJu, I didn't want her to want to come here simply because we're in LA. I wanted her to want to come here because we could offer what she wants, to be challenged, to grow, to win at the highest level. And oh, by the way, my little sister can come watch me play. My little brother can come watch me play. My parents, right? Or that we could use the LA market to help grow your brand. But I wanted those to be secondary to wanting to be part of this program. And so, yeah, it's unbelievable what's happening in real time. And I'm grateful, for the support from the administration, because we all knew this was what USC could be. But now to see us attracting some of the best players and humans, out there is pretty neat stuff.
Let's talk about, moving, of course, them shutting down the Pac-12, and
Yep.
now you're moving to the Big Ten. Talk about that feeling. What are your plans going into it? Do you have any plans going into the Big Ten conference?
Yeah, I mean, so this obviously kind of took us all by surprise when it happened. I had no knowledge. I got a call 15 minutes before it broke on the internet that we were going to move to the Big Ten. I was like, what? And I think we've all grieved for the loss of a great conference in the Pac-12 and the rivalries and the friendships that we had. And at the same time, I've had time to really look at the positives in this gigantic platform that we're going to have. The TV deals that will put our team in every national, primetime TV slot. It's proven, obviously, how the game can grow when you put us on linear networks and the biggest ones. So we're excited. We've got to go learn a whole new conference. Where there's some interesting matchups, I think. What I kind of thought, at the time that we needed to do was not try and change to go fit into the Big Ten. We wanted to say, let's bring the best version of LA. Let's bring the best version of USC. Let's bring the best version of the West Coast, basketball to the Big Ten. And so we intend to, just come into a new conference with a lot of humility for what these other programs have done and how good they are, but to come in and try and, raise the level and just be a team that other people have to really contend with.
We saw, I think it was yesterday, where you guys posted your home and away schedule, home games, you got more people attending. Do you try to strategize more with who you want to play home and away, or is it just about how the chips fall?
So with the Big Ten, they create the travel, who you play home and who you play away. So with 18 teams in the Big Ten, it was established, a month or two ago that everyone would play their rivalry team twice and everybody else once, either home or away. And the Big Ten creates those matchups. So we're fortunate. What I told people with the Big Ten, and people are like, oh, there's increased travel. We still have the same number of home games. We still are based in LA. So we're going to have Penn State and Ohio State here, Michigan and Michigan State here, Nebraska here, I think Northwestern and Illinois here, and the other one I believe is Minnesota. And the other teams will play on the road, and then it will flip. So our fans will get to see, Ohio State this year. They'll get to see Iowa at home the following year. We don't have control over that, but you do have control over the fact that this is going to be one, the premier conference in women's basketball. Where we have some control is the non-conference schedule. And that's been a trip, these last several months of, obviously a lot of people want us, in their events because of the star power of JuJu and her teammates. We've been trying to work on some really good home and homes that will be dropping that information soon. But we know what this moment is like for women's basketball, and we want to challenge ourselves against the best in a non-conference. And we know that we're in a top conference. So our fans are going to have a lot of, I think, things to look forward to both in home games and watching us on TV when we're on the road.
You just mentioned non-conference. I'm sure you saw over social media, people want that USC matchup. Can you drop a hint? Will we get that? Are you working on it? What can you say?
I'll definitely let you know that we're not dodging anyone. We want to play all the best teams. We'll have to stay tuned, for the matchups that are going to be coming out. But, we're working on this year. We're working on the year after. And I think there's a lot of exciting things to come. So
in closing, I'll just ask, what has this past season taught you? And then, of course, looking to the future with those lessons learned, what do you plan, for the Trojans in the 24-25 season?
This is a great question. I would say, what this past season has taught me is that with everyone's vision aligned in the same direction, there really are no limits to where this program can go. I mean, if you had told me, a year ago that we were going to have standing room only sold out crowd for our UCLA game, I don't know if a lot of people would have believed you. The people said, oh, you can't get Friday night crowds at women's basketball in LA, or can't do this, can't do that. We've busted through all of those narratives and we've reset the standard. And so I think the biggest lesson is magic can be made when everyone's aligned and you have the right, you have the right people. And then I would say with going forward, I'm trying not to stand still. We believe we have the best player, in women's college basketball here and the most exciting player. And we have an iconic program, and we don't we don't want to settle for status quo. We want to keep saying, okay, how can we grow this program? How can we help grow women's basketball? How can we find another echelon? You know, it's a really cool inflection point for women's basketball, and we want to be at the precipice of it. And so there's a lot of challenges, I think, to keep pushing it forward. But while at the same time keeping the integrity of what makes us who we are, we want to involve the community. We want little kids to come to games who can't necessarily afford a ticket, but who want to be here. Like, we're going to help the game grow by giving back and being part of this community.